Anisha, we have had the pleasure as an organization at Indiaspora of getting to know you over the past 2 or 3 years at least. And a small anecdote in the, by the way, we also have the pleasure of knowing your father from his philanthropic perspective of the Olympic Gold Quest. Anisha, of course, is the CEO of LiveLoveLaugh Foundation. And the reason I mentioned that is because, you know, in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, of course, when your dad was at the peak of his powers as a shuttler, he won the All England Championship against, I think, I'm an avid sports follower. He won the All England Championship against a gentleman, a Danish gentleman named Paul Erik Høyer Larsen. And I think there was an anecdote where he was so joyous that he forgot to shake hands. And then when Paul Erik Høyer Larsen was asked, you know, about that later, he said, "Oh, Prakash is such a lovely guy. You know, it doesn't matter what he does. I know his heart." You know, and I mentioned that because in getting to know you over the past 2, 3, 4 years, the work you do, the authenticity and the passion with which you do it, one sees the same grace. So thank you for being here. Robbie, by the way, Robin Uthappa is the formal name, but he prefers going by Robbie. Robbie, you, over the past several months, as we've been having a conversation about this, I mean, you know, I've known Robin Uthappa and seen Robin Uthappa on TV, as I think many of us have as a cricket fan, but the authenticity and the openness with which you speak about such a difficult subject has been very touching, and I'm looking forward to this conversation and what that will mean for all of our attendees. Let me start with you, Anisha. What is it that inspired you to do the work that you do? Tell us the story of LiveLoveLaugh Foundation, how it got started, and what it is that you are currently doing and aspire to do at the organization.
Sure. Thank you for that, Sanjeev. I think that's probably one of the best compliments that a child can receive, to know that, you know, you're compared to your parent. Firstly, thank you to Emma, the team at Indiaspora, and to all of you for having me here. It's an absolute honor to speak in front of so many great achievers. But to answer your question on mental health, our founder, my sister Deepika, experienced mental illness when she was at the time at the peak of her career. She went through anxiety and depression, but she did not know what she was going through. And we were fortunate enough to have access to professional support in the form of a counselor and a psychiatrist, and also fortunate enough to have you know, the affordability to be able to receive that treatment. And once she recovered from that process, and took about a year to get, you know, to a stage where you can actually sort of function, she wanted to be able to create an organization that really did a lot of consistent work in mental health, and which can last, you know, way beyond, say, all of us. That's really the reason why the foundation started up in the first place. I actually joined them a year or so later, wanting to be able to volunteer a little bit of my time, but within the first, you know, couple of weeks of spending some time, the enormity of the situation with regard to mental illness in India as well as globally really captured my attention. Secondly, the unique position that this organization has to be able to make a difference in a country like India with the position that we're in, I think allowed me to, you know, sort of start thinking of a career beyond. At the time, I was a professional golfer and started to think about a career beyond sport as well. So that's really when I made, you know, the transition. And it's been, you know, it's going to be 10 years that we've been around as an organization. What we focus on, if I can just summarize it in you know, easy way for everyone to remember, we like to call it the 3 A's. Awareness and destigmatization of mental health, creating accessibility or enabling access to credible information as well as resources in the form of mental health professionals, free helpline numbers. And the third aspect is affordability, because whether it's urban or rural India, mental health care is not really very affordable at right now. So these are the 3 things that we focus on. In terms of the future, we want to be able to solve for mental health a little bit at scale. Because if you look at the numbers, or, you know, the number of people who are affected by this, The Lancet journal actually says that 1 out of 7, every 7 Indians will experience mental illness in their lifetime. And if there are about 300 people in this room, you can do the math and figure out. And this is also a pre-COVID statistic. There isn't any updated data that at least I'm aware of post-COVID, and that I'm sure that number has gone up drastically. So if we have to solve for this at scale, I'd say so far we've just about scratched the surface. We want to be able to make a really big dent and be able to help a lot more people through our work.
And in terms of scaling the work that you're doing, what are some of the key ingredients that you think would be required to bring what you are doing to larger scale?
Couple of things. I think something that we've started doing of late or trying to do is working alongside various governments, state as well as central, to try and really partner and collaborate with them. Partnerships is something that we're very focused on from day one. We've been doing it well. So that's one. Secondly, trying to integrate technology, and this is the right room to talk about that in, but how do you use technology in the form of teleconsultation, tele-mental health, to solve for not just internal processes, but also to reach a larger audience. And we do a lot of work in rural areas, so it's also where a lot more people need help and support. And then the third thing is, of course, partnerships with like-minded organizations, spreading the word, spreading the message. So I think a combination of all of these things is really what we would do.
Thanks, Anisha. Robbie, I'm going to turn to you, and I'm going to ask you a two-part question, or really, I guess, two questions. One is, tell us a little bit about your life's journey, and I'll dovetail that by saying this. It's a very banal question, but I'll ask it because I think it fleetingly crosses the minds of people when they think about mental health in general. How does someone who has the peak of achievement and success and adulation and fame and all of that, wearing an India jersey, like yourself, how does one face mental health challenges when one is in that kind of position? I know this is something Deepika has talked about as well in the past, that mental health is something that can impact all of us and does impact all of us. So it's not about fame and stature, which is why I said it's a banal question, but it is something that fleetingly does cross people's minds. Why is he facing challenges, kind of thing? That's one. And second, what are you doing about it right now? I know we've talked about it, but I'd like you to tell our participants in their own words as to what you're doing.
First of all, thank you for having me here. I think it's an incredible platform to be able to talk about this thing. I think mental health and well-being in that sense, as far as answering your first question is concerned, I think for high-performing individuals, we're a little bit more primed for this in the sense that the stakes are a lot higher, so you experience the pressures of it a lot more intensely. And simply because of that reason, I think you tend to kind of experience the high-pressure situations a lot more. There's a lot more at stake, and that kind of primes you for these kind of situations where you don't really pay attention to your mental health in that sense, because you operate from a high-stress point for a lot of time. And when you're exposed to that situation for a certain period of time, then you kind of put yourself in a situation where you're playing catch-up because you're always behind the 8 ball, and you play catch-up with it, and suddenly you feel like nothing is right. And because nothing is right, you don't know where to start from. And I myself am someone who's experienced that, which is why I speak so actively about it. I think I went through my journey of being clinically depressed, and that kind of progressed to becoming suicidal. And then it was through those experiences that I realized that, okay, I need help, and made myself aware of that I needed help, sought help, and then made a bunch of mistakes along the way, but learned the right way. In fact, within our society, in the Indian diaspora, so to speak, it is still at a very nascent stage, and I think we need to shed a lot more light on it. We need to talk about it a lot more. I think shatter the taboo that's attached to mental health and well-being, and I think it has to become more mainstream. The conversations have begun. We are throwing light on it through being present in events such as these. But I think to break the stigma attached to it is critical in our ecosystem. And if we can do that in our society, I think we'll set ourselves up to be able to progress a lot more within society.
And Robbie, the second question, what are you doing about addressing this problem?
Well, to do my 2 cents, I'm actually certified myself as a performance coach and an NLP practitioner. I've pivoted slightly away from cricket, getting into the coaching space, trying to do my bit as far as, shedding light on this is concerned, because, if there's a dark corner, then people are always scared of it, but you shed more light on that space, then people get aware of, okay, what's there in that space? And then they start venturing into that space, become more familiar with it, and they realize, hey, this is not so bad. I remember the first time I went to a counselor, one of the first instructions I got from my mom was, don't tell anyone about this, And then I was like, okay, as a young kid, as a 21-year-old, you're like, okay, fine, I'm not going to tell anyone about it. But cut to 3 months later of working with my counselor, I felt so empowered. I was thinking, and I asked my mom, why shouldn't I be telling anyone about this? I should be telling everybody about this. This is so cool. This is so awesome. I feel so empowered 3 months into just having conversations with someone, And I was like, we need to speak a lot more about this. And that is why I do what I do with this work is concerned. And today, I think when I find myself on this platform, having this conversation, I think here I am with some of the topmost Indians from around the world. And I feel like this is a great opportunity for us to, we are the change makers, I believe. And I think today, as we sit here, you all are leading different verticals in different fields. And I feel like you all have the position and the power to be able to create a change within our ecosystem by setting up systems in place that will trickle down to the layman. I think the LiveLoveLaugh Foundation and many such foundations are doing a lot of work from the rural front, but I think from the urban front. Today, I think when I visit a lot of corporates for the work that I do, I see that very little has been done as far as mental health and mental well-being is concerned. There is a designated mental well-being month, but they just send to offsites and they made to do yoga, so to speak. And I think mental health and well-being goes a lot deeper than that. And I think here, the people around here, people here at this forum can actually create a change for good as far as that is concerned. And I think that is what I think I'm endeavoring to do with all of this.
Thanks, Robbie. I know that neither of you obviously is a qualified psychiatrist, so I'm not asking for a medical diagnosis, of course, but the point I do want to sort of bring home and ask you about is, you talked about the need, Robbie, to, you understood, you had the awareness to figure out that you needed assistance. And in sensitizing India and the larger world about the importance of mental health, I think one of the first steps in that communication has to be for people to understand that they need to seek assistance. Many of us probably want to think of ourselves as saying, I'm all right, I don't need help, right? And so how do you get to that point? Is there anything in your work, in learning about mental health, in your journeys, how does one get to that point that you have the self-awareness to realize that you need to seek assistance? Either of you.
So I think, from my understanding, mental health, or mental illness rather, and let me differentiate, there's mental health and then there's illness, just like it is with any other health-related. So with mental health, I think there are a lot of things that all of us can do as individuals, and we talked about, being able to help others. I think the first thing that all of us need to do is start taking better care of ourselves. And the simplest analogy I can give you all is when you sit on an aircraft and before we take off and the air hostess or the stewardess says, in case of turbulence, there'll be an oxygen mask that drops down. And the first thing you need to do is put the mask on yourself before you can help someone else. And that's the exact same thing to do with mental health, because I know that if I'm not able to take care of myself, I can't do the work that I do, or I can't support a family member or a friend or a colleague. So I make sure that I try and take care of my own mental health. And if I can be extremely honest, I go to therapy myself. So if I don't do those things that work for me, I won't be able to take care of someone else. So I think that's the first step. Secondly, in terms of mental illness, there are signs and symptoms. While it's not as easy as identification of a physical illness, there are signs and symptoms that everyone can, be aware about, which are different for, stress and smaller levels of anxiety that we all experience on a regular basis. But then it gets into, a little bit more clinical, which is depression. And then further down on the spectrum, you have, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, psychosis. And those are all sort of clinical issues that need to be dealt with by a mental health professional, ideally by a psychiatrist, in combination with a counselor who can also work at a slightly deeper level. So I think understanding the signs and symptoms is critical. With regard to mental health, there are, a lot of things that we can do, and one of the things that I love to talk about is something that our chairperson, who's a psychiatrist, also talks about, is that unlike the West, we have the unique ability as India to marry practices of the East and the West. And when I say that, I mean with the West, a lot of the focus is only on medication, whereas in the East, we have access to practices like meditation, yoga, spending time in nature, and there's so many other aspects that we can cultivate just that have been passed on from generations, and we must make use of that to be able to have, let's say, a holistic approach to mental health as opposed to just physiological.
So I think to just carry on from what Anisha said, I think one of the things that we can do as we move forward is to set perhaps programs that run a little bit deeper. I think when you look at what signs and symptoms you kind of experience and how you catch yourself with being aware of, there's something that's off. One of the things that I noticed was I caught myself in a situation where I felt like I was just operating through my subconscious, and then I was perhaps looking to do something that was some form of self-harm, and then I caught myself, I got conscious about it, and then as soon as I got conscious about it, I stepped back and I said, okay, what's going on? To sometimes have an internal conversation with yourself as to where you are and how you're feeling from time to time. I think today, with the way society is set up, there is a basic lack of empathy that exists in the world. So if we can operate from a place where we see someone for a certain period of time not truly feeling okay, then I think just to sit down and ask them, hey, is everything all right? Just to check in with them from time to time. And similarly, while you're checking in with other people, sometimes to even check in with yourself. If you find yourself not feeling okay for a certain period of time, probably a couple of weeks, just check in with yourself, hey, is everything okay? What has gone off? And to raise that self-awareness in that sense and just check in with yourself from time to time, I think becomes critical. Oftentimes in times of stress with the rigmaroles of our life and what we have going on, we oftentimes put ourselves in a situation where there's lack of sleep, there's stress that's going on, there's probably work pressure, there's probably family pressure, there are multiple things going on, and we don't ask ourselves the questions about, are we okay? And I think just to raise that awareness with ourselves and with people around us and the people that we love, if that can be done, I think it'll go a long way in just raising awareness. And a lot can be done, I think, even within the certain ecosystem that we exist in. I can talk about my fraternity. I think very little is done as far as mental health and well-being is concerned, as far as cricket is concerned as a sport, or sport in general for that matter. We find ourselves in high-stakes situations, high-pressure situations, but very little is done. And I think it's the mindset that's attached to it, and I think that needs to change. If we can set systems in place that is there in ecosystems that people can lean on, then I think we'll achieve a lot more better results over a period of time.
The conversation around mental health is gaining currency in the world of cricket as well, as you know, Robbie. And to your point about an ecosystem around you, a caring group of people, the ex-US Surgeon General, twice Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, often talks about how loneliness is terrible and how you really do need that ecosystem around you. So both of you make, I think, that same point. I know we are over time, so I'll give both of you 30 seconds each. One last closing parting thought message that you, or call to action, that you really want to leave our audience with.
Well, My call to action would be pretty straightforward, as in I think here today we sit amongst people in decision-making places, and I would encourage all of you all to pay genuine attention to mental health and well-being in the spaces that you all are, and to create spaces that can make it possible for people to reach out and you know, just make it easier for them to discuss things and to raise awareness as far as mental health is concerned, and to create an ecosystem that is filled with a little bit of empathy at least, because I think the world needs more of that.
I think echoing, you know, what Robin says, there's a term that, you know, everyone in the mental health sector was using during COVID. We were calling this the silent pandemic, and I don't think this has ended. It's something that is affecting so many people globally that I think we really need to prioritize it for ourselves, in our workplaces, and you know, family systems everywhere. There was a little campaign that we did in 2016, which happened to be India's first public awareness campaign in mental health. And there was a line from that I really like, which is, again, along the lines of empathy. And I'll probably just, you know, close with that, which is, Parwa hai to dobara pucho. And the name of the campaign was Dobara Pucho. So for anyone who doesn't understand Hindi, it translates to, if you care, ask again. So can we, you know, as a society, as individuals, as, you know, as empathetic people, I like to look at the world as glass half full as opposed to glass half empty. So for anyone who's going through mental illness, it's really, you know, they're looking for light at the end of the tunnel. So can we just be those individuals who can shine that light on them?
Thank you. Thank you for this very important conversation. We could go on a lot longer. I'm guessing you're available for people who might have questions after the plenary. But thank you so much. Let's pose for a group picture before we call the next session up.